we all navigate the world using this incredible, sometimes baffling biological supercomputer, right between our ears. It's what lets us learn and dream, move, feel, everything, really. And, while lots of us might kind of roll our eyes at old myths like we only use 10% of our brain, the actual complexities, the real story of how this organ works, well, that's way more interesting. Welcome to the Deep Dive. This is where we take a whole stack of sources and boil them down to the key insights, cutting through the noise so you can get genuinely well-informed. Today, our mission is to journey into the pretty amazing world of neuroscience, the study of the nervous system. We've gathered a load of resources, some basic definitions we'll get past quickly, but also groundbreaking research methods and, yeah, those stubborn myths that just won't quit. Our goal is to unpack what neuroscience really is, how we actually investigate its, frankly, stunning complexity, and clear up some of those persistent misconceptions, basically helping you get up to speed fast on this endlessly fascinating field.
Yeah, and what's really striking about neuroscience right now is just the sheer speed of discovery. It's incredible. But before we jump into the cutting edge, let's just make sure we're grounded in the basics. So, at its core, neuroscience is the study of the nervous system. And that's not just your brain, right? It's that whole intricate network of nerve cells, the ones interpreting information, coordinating literally every activity in your body, all in response to what's happening around you.
Okay, so it's this massive coordinating network, but how does it actually do that? I mean, I picture some kind of super fast internal messaging system, but that sounds almost too simple.
It is a communication network, definitely. But the complexity and efficiency are just mind-blowing. Think of it less like one simple system and maybe more like a huge network of interconnected highways and local roads, constantly moving vital information between countless cities, your organs, your muscles, your senses.
Okay, highways and roads. I like that analogy.
Yeah, so some of these neural routes, they send signals down to the body, telling muscles to contract, fine-tuning how organs work. Others go up into the brain, bringing in this flood of sensory data from, everything around you. That's what builds your conscious experience. And then you've got these incredibly complex pathways between different brain areas. They allow for lightning-fast internal chats, like when your eyes spot a threat, bam, a get-ready signal flashes across your whole system. It's dynamic, constant information flowing in all directions.
That really helps picture the scale of it. So what's the actual language being spoken on these neural highways? How does the info travel?
It's a really sophisticated mix, actually. It uses both electrical and chemical signals. Neurons, those are the main active cells. They're super sensitive to changes in their electrical charge. Then information gets passed from one neuron to the next using a whole range of chemicals called neurotransmitters.
Ah, the neurotransmitters. Heard of those.
Exactly. They're the messengers. They allow for these incredibly intricate, millisecond-fast conversations happening billions of times a second. And here's something interesting, a kind of foundational point that hints at deeper evolution stuff. If you compare brain sizes across different mammals, like a rat, cat, chimp, human, dolphin, the size varies massively, obviously. But you find these striking similarities in the general layout, the basic structures. It suggests a kind of conserved, shared blueprint.
That's pretty profound, isn't it? That such different species share a fundamental design, even with our huge differences in, thinking ability, really highlights the core principles. But this isn't just pure biology, is it? I always hear neuroscience described as this grand, integrative symphony.
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the most critical things to get about modern neuroscience. It's deeply interdisciplinary. It's less a single field, more a vibrant meeting point for lots of academic disciplines. Each one brings unique tools, a unique perspective. And that's essential because the nervous system is just so overwhelmingly complex. No single field could ever figure it out alone. This integrative approach is exactly why we can tackle such huge questions.
So if we sort of pull back the curtain on this symphony,
Yeah.
who are the main players? How do these different fields chip in?
Okay, let's start with biology. That's the foundation, really. You've got molecular neurobiologists looking at proteins, gene regulation, the really basic level stuff for how neurons work. Cellular neurobiologists look at how neurons connect, form networks. Cognitive neuroscientists link all that biology to, behavior and mental processes. Genetics, for instance, is key for understanding things like Huntington's disease. Even evolutionary biology helps explain why certain circuits develop the way they did, like that toxoplasma parasite, how it can change an animal's fear response to help itself reproduce. Wild stuff.
Right. And then there's psychology. Historically, seems like they laid a lot of the early groundwork for just thinking about the brain and mind connection.
Exactly. Psychology wrestled with the big mind-body problem way before we had fancy scanners.
Right.
How does consciousness emerge from just cells? They pioneered that idea of emergence, the whole being greater than the sum of its parts. That's a really critical concept for neuroscience. Psychologists often come at it from a top-down view, start with the whole person,
Hmm.
then try to figure out the brain stuff underneath.
And chemistry. I mean, my morning coffee definitely tells me chemistry affects my nervous system.
Huh. Yeah, perfect example and relatable. Chemistry is hugely influential.
Hmm.
At every single level, we have endogenous chemicals made inside our bodies, like signaling molecules, hormones. Their specific shape dictates exactly what they do. But like you said, the nervous system is also incredibly sensitive to exogenous chemicals once we're outside.
Yeah.
Caffeine, alcohol, medicines, they chemically change how our brain works,
Mm.
affecting perception, behavior, everything.
It's amazing to think about the chemistry, but what about the raw mechanics? How does physics fit in? How do neurons actually work electrically?
Well, physics provides the absolute basics of how neurons function. They're basically tiny biological circuits. They maintain a negative electrical charge measured in millivolts across their outer layer, their membrane. When they fire off a signal, an action potential, it's a really fast temporary flip in that voltage. And that change is driven by charged ions like sodium and potassium moving across the membrane. They're just following basic rules of electrical attraction and repulsion. It's essentially electrical engineering, but happening on this tiny cellular scale.
Wow, okay. Micromechanics. And with billions of these things firing off all the time, I can only imagine the sheer amount of data. That must be where mathematical modeling comes in, right? Computational neuroscience.
Absolutely indispensable. Computational neuroscience has exploded precisely because you need serious mathematical power to even conceptualize, let alone understand, such a complex system. We're talking roughly 86 billion neurons in the human brain, each one making thousands of connections. Without powerful mathematical models, computational tools, that number is just, well, almost impossible to really grasp or simulate properly.
So all this science, from molecules to math, eventually it needs to help real people. That's where healthcare providers step in, connecting the lab to the clinic.
Indeed. Neurologists, psychiatrists, they're on the front lines. They apply that scientific knowledge directly to patients. A classic example is Dr. Oliver Sacks. His deep understanding of the dopamine system led to using levodopa for Parkinson's disease, changed lives. And diagnostic tools like CT scans let us see injuries or tumors. EEGs help diagnose epilepsy by measuring the brain's electrical rhythms.
And then you have the engineers who seem to be building all the cool toys that let the scientists do their work.
Totally vital.
Yeah.
Engineers develop the specialized equipment neuroscientists rely on. Think of those super precise patch clamp rigs to listen in on a single neuron, or electron microscopes to see the tiny synapses. They also work closely with doctors to turn scientific discoveries into actual therapies, like those deep brain stimulators used for Parkinson's now. What really unites all these different people, the molecular biologists, engineers, everyone, is this shared deep fascination with how the nervous system works. Its complexity means there are just countless unanswered questions, and that shared curiosity, that sense of wonder, that's what drives the whole field.
Yeah, it's clearly this massive team effort, super dynamic. So if everyone's working together, how do we actually, uncover the secrets? What are the key research methods?
Well, the gold standard, really, for establishing understanding in science, especially neuroscience, is experimental design. It's a rigorous process, step by step. A scientist comes up with a specific research question, forms a hypothesis you can actually test, and then runs controlled experiments. The main goal here is to establish a causal relationship, meaning does changing one specific thing, the independent variable, directly cause a change in something else, the dependent variable?
Okay, but how do they make sure it's really cause and effect and not just like a coincidence?
Right, so a well-designed experiment carefully controls everything else, minimizing anything extra that might influence the results, what we call confounding variables. Crucially, they use a control group. That group is treated exactly the same as the experimental group, except they don't get the specific change being tested. And usually people are assigned to groups randomly to avoid bias. But here's the thing, there's this inherent trade-off, right? The more real world your study, the more relevant it feels, maybe. But the harder it is to pin down clear causes. The more controlled it is, the clearer the mechanism, but maybe it's less directly applicable to, a whole living person. This constant balancing act is just fundamental to how we learn about the brain.
That makes total sense, that trade-off. Beyond those really controlled experiments, I know case studies have also been huge historically, right?
Yeah.
Especially for learning about rare stuff.
Oh, invaluable. A case study is basically a super detailed description of one single patient or maybe unique situation. They're crucial for looking at rare conditions you just couldn't ethically recreate in the lab. And they often give us these profound insights into what different brain areas do. Like the most famous one is probably Phineas Gage back in 1848. Railroad worker survived having an iron rod blown right through his left frontal lobe.
Yeah, that story is unforgettable.
Right, he lived, but his personality changed dramatically. That gave us some of the first big clues about the frontal lobe's role in controlling impulses, social behavior.
And patient HM, that's another classic one.
Yes, equally famous. HM had surgery to remove his left and right hippocampus to treat epilepsy, but it left him unable to form new long-term memories. So case studies are fantastic for sparking hypotheses like, okay, maybe the hippocampus is vital for navigation, which scientists can then go test properly. But it's really important to remember they only show a correlation, not definite causation. And it's hard to generalize from just one person to everybody.
Which I guess brings us to using animals in research. Why is that still so necessary if we ultimately want to understand human brains?
Well, there are just so many questions about how the brain works or about diseases that are impossible or completely unethical to test directly on humans. So scientists often turn to non-human model organisms. There's a whole range from tiny C. elegans, worms, and fruit flies up through zebrafish, birds, mice, rats, and macaque monkeys. As you kind of go up that ladder, the model shares more genetically and physiologically with humans, although there are always important differences. Macaques, for instance, share about 93% of our genetic material. That makes them incredibly valuable for studying really complex thinking processes.
And what's the system for making sure that research is done responsibly?
Oh, absolutely critical. The scientific community operates under really strict ethical guidelines, moral responsibilities.
Yeah.
Animals should only be used if the experiment is scientifically valuable and there are no other viable alternatives. Every effort has to be made to minimize any pain or distress. And research places are closely monitored by what's called an Institutional Animal Care and Use Committee, an IACUC. That includes vets, scientists, community members, all making sure federal laws and ethical standards are strictly followed.
Okay, this is all incredibly detailed work, and yet, despite all this careful research, so many myths about the brain just seem to stick around. Time for some serious brain myth busting.
Let's tackle some of the big ones.
Yeah.
Myth number one, we only use 10% of our brain.
That's just wildly inaccurate, a really common misunderstanding. Functional brain scans clearly show we use pretty much every part of our brain, just, not all at the exact same second.
Okay. So it's not about unused potential, it's about timing. Exactly.
Yeah.
The neurologist V.S. Ramachandran has a great analogy. Think of a traffic light. It uses all three lights, red, yellow, green, but at specific coordinated times. If too many brain cells were firing all at once or at the wrong times, imagine a traffic light showing green and red simultaneously. It'd be chaos. In the brain, that kind of excessive, uncoordinated activity is actually what happens during a seizure. So the real insight is a precise timing and orchestration, not that most of the brain is just sitting idle.
That makes way more sense. Every part has its job. It's about the coordination.
Yeah.
Okay, what's myth number 2?
Forming memories causes new neurons to be born. Another common misconception. Our understanding is still evolving, for sure, but the main idea right now is that memories are stored primarily at the synapses, those connections between neurons. It's about changes in how they communicate, the strength of those connections. Now, most adult neurons don't really reproduce, but there's a process called neurogenesis, the birth of new neurons. It happens in a couple of specific spots in the adult brain, like the hippocampus, important for learning, and the olfactory epithelium for smell. But that's not seen as the main way we form everyday memories.
Interesting. Okay, and what about the idea that the brain cannot repair itself? That sounds pretty bleak, especially if someone has an injury.
Fortunately, that one is largely a myth too, but with an important distinction. The brain shows incredible plasticity. That's its amazing ability to change and reorganize itself over time. People can and definitely do recover function after injuries, like a stroke. The brain literally rewires itself, finding new pathways using undamaged areas. However, it's crucial to say this doesn't fully apply to neurodegenerative conditions like advanced Parkinson's or Alzheimer's. In those cases, there's widespread destruction of neurons, and the brain's ability to recover function just through plasticity is unfortunately quite limited.
Okay, so plasticity is real, but it has limits depending on the situation. Got it. Now this next one, if I'm super logical, am I left-brained? And if I'm, a free-spirited artist type, am I right-brained? That's myth number 4, yeah.
Yes, and it's another one that's really pervasive, really common. The reality is, almost every function, sensing things, moving muscles, memory, complex thoughts, involves both hemispheres working together, collaborating constantly. The major exception, and it's a big one, and we don't fully know why, is language. For most people, processing and producing language is heavily handled by the left hemisphere. And here's a fascinating quirk of how we're wired. It's called contralateral organization. Signals from the left side of your brain cross over to control the right side of your body, and vice versa.
Whoa, really? Left brain controls right body.
Yep. It seems to be this kind of almost unintended consequence of how things evolved. An elegant solution? Maybe, but with this unexpected design feature, it shows how interconnected things are, moving way past simple left-right divides.
That's a perfect example of how our understanding is always changing, right? Getting more complex, more integrated. It really underlines that neuroscience is constantly evolving.
Oh, completely. The pace of discovery now is just breathtaking. Someone estimated that more neuroscience papers were published just between 2015 and 2020 than in the entire 70 years before that.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's anything but static. Historically, I mean, even way back, 6500 BCE, we find skulls with evidence of trepanation drilling holes in the skull. And some show signs of healing, meaning the person actually survived. Shows how long humans have been curious, maybe trying to intervene.
So even our ancestors were trying to figure things out, just with very different tools. Then later came localizationism, people like Paul Broca.
Right. Mid-1800s, Broca made huge contributions, concluding that specific brain areas do specific jobs. Ablation studies where damaging a brain area leads to losing a specific function, like language, really supported this. But a key insight now is that absolutes are rare in neuroscience. While some functions are more localized to certain areas, they almost always rely on complex networks involving many other parts of the brain working together. The brain is way more interconnected and adaptable than just a simple one-to-one map.
And that interconnectedness, that adaptability, that brings us right back to plasticity, doesn't it? The brain's amazing flexibility.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And this might be the brain's most profound feature. Its built-in ability to change and adapt throughout our entire lives. Think about how people who are blind can learn to use visual parts of their brain for echolocation, basically seeing with sound, or how stroke survivors can regain movement with therapy as their brain finds new routes, or even just how easily babies in a bilingual home learn two languages. That involves fundamental changes in their brain structure and function. Our experiences literally reshape our nervous system. It shows this incredible capacity to adapt.
Wow. Okay, so if we try to boil down what we've really covered today, neuroscience is the study of this incredibly complex, super adaptable nervous system. It's this massively integrated field, pulling in insights from biology, psychology, chemistry, physics, math, engineering,
Mm.
all aiming at the same goal. We use all sorts of methods, careful experiments for cause and effect, revealing case studies, ethical animal models to try and figure it out, and crucially, it's so important to question those common brain myths because this field is constantly evolving. Our understanding is always getting deeper, more nuanced.
Exactly. And hopefully, knowing this gives you a deeper understanding, not just of yourself, but of the biological machinery that creates our perceptions, our interactions, what it even means to be human.
Which brings us to our provocative thought for today. If the brain's plasticity means it can constantly adapt, learn, even reorganize itself based on our experiences throughout our whole lives, what does that really suggest about the limits of human potential? What new skills, what new ways of thinking might we unlock as we keep digging into the secrets of this amazing, flexible organ? The journey of discovery for all of us is definitely far from over.